All right, thank you.
Okay, hi everyone, and welcome. This is an information session about the Frank-Ratchye Fund for Arts at the Frontier, which is offered by the Frank-Ratchye Studio for Creative Inquiry. The studio is the sort of central research laboratory of the CMU College of Fine Arts, and it's a non-degree granting, mission-driven unit of enhancement that is dedicated to the support of atypical, anti-disciplinary, and interinstitutional research at the intersection of art, science, technology, and culture. I'm Golan Levin. I've been the director of the studio since 2009. I'm currently co-director with Professor Nika Ross, who's here from the School of Drama. And Nika will be taking over as director in this summer, as I mentioned. And then we're also really thrilled to have join us today Dr. Harrison Apple, who is the new associate director of the studio. And actually, it's very important to introduce Harrison because Harrison is going to be the first point of contact for people who have questions about FRFAF. So if you're interested in applying for a Frank-Ratchye Fund for Arts at the Frontier grant, as we call them, FRFAF Awards, you will probably first speak with Harrison if you have questions about your application or about other kinds of things. And when you have an active FRFAF grant, Harrison will also probably be one of the first points of contact in terms of helping you think through logistics, dealing with contractual issues or other kinds of interesting challenges that arise. So today we have a slide presentation. I will be presenting most of it. I think I can be relatively interruptible, but if we sense that your question is going to require a longer answer, then we'll probably push you off to the Q&A at the end. And so I'm just going to kind of dig in. I'm going to give a presentation about this. And so I'm going to say share my screen. I'm going to say share. I don't think I need to share sound, so I'm not going to there. Okay, and here's this. And I'm going to turn on the slideshow here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Great. And you can all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay, wonderful. So this is the beginning of this presentation about the Frank-Ratchye Fund for Arts at the Frontier. You're seeing a project that was supported by the FRFAF grants actually quite a long time ago. It's this kind of large inflatable chamber place made by a couple of undergraduates with a $500 microgrant available from FRFAF. And it's kind of, it was placemaking, it was interdisciplinary, it was kind of a radical intervention. It was kind of, maybe not even didn't have all the permissions it should have, but it created a really magical space for a few moments. And I remember it fondly. What, first of all, is the studio? Because the studio is this unit that you may not be too familiar with. The studio is the central research lab of the College of Fine Arts, as I mentioned, and it's been around since 1989. But in 2013, Ed Frank and Sarah Ratchye donated some funds to us, which are used to support these grants, the Frank-Ratchye Fund for Arts at the Frontier grants. Ed was an alum of computer science. Sarah was an alum of the School of Art, and they really wanted to support interdisciplinary projects by faculty, staff, and students. So I'm going to kind of move on. The FRFAF motto is "Mighty oaks from little acorns grow," and we want to support early kinds of research in arts, in particular arts research and creative research that connects with the arts. And so the FRFAF is an endowment to encourage the creation of innovative arts research by the faculty, staff, and students of Carnegie Mellon. And we seek to create support groundbreaking projects created here at Carnegie Mellon that can be described as thinking at the edges of the intersection of disciplines. The FRFAF program supports approximately 50 grants per year, totaling approximately $50,000 annually, give or take. So who's eligible? The lead applicant on your application, or the primary investigator, in other words, must be somebody who's actively affiliated with Carnegie Mellon. Can't be someone from outside. And there are basically, we try to make it as flexible as possible. So faculty principal investigators can be of any type: tenure track, teaching track, adjunct, or instructional faculty, special faculty, visiting faculty. Student investigators must be currently enrolled in a degree granting program at CMU and in good academic standing, so you can't be on probation or in a leave of absence or suspension. Interestingly, and I think very importantly, staff are eligible, and this is quite unusual. There aren't really any other grant programs I'm aware of at Carnegie Mellon, for which staff are eligible so that they can pursue their creative research. So are things like project scientists, research staff, visiting scholars, postdoctoral researchers, basically from any Carnegie Mellon department. Also, more unusual entities are also eligible to apply, including entities that you make up yourself. So things like collaborations or teams, clubs, student organizations, faculty on behalf of a class, or even entire departments. Alumni cannot be principal investigators unless they're actively affiliated with Carnegie Mellon. So somebody who's out in the world and is no longer actively affiliated, no, but if they've come back and they have a job here, or if they're a student again, that's great. And also, and I'll talk more about this later, in order to be eligible to apply, you have to have completed documentation of any previous projects that you received grants for. Okay.
I want to complicate
yeah.
one thing on the last slide. When it talks about collaborators, this also, you can be collaborating with people and forming groups with people that are not at CMU, but you yourself are, correct?
That's right. Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. Just looking for a place where I can park my little window there. Okay. It's always blocking something. Okay. So, and the kinds of things that we've supported with FRFAF have been incredibly wide ranging, including installations, books, software, films, games, product designs, community projects, tactical interventions, workshops, exhibitions, and much more. And we have documentation of several hundred projects online on our website at the link you see below. So we offer two different kinds of grants in FRFAF. One of them is microgrants and the other one is full grants. So microgrants are $500 and under, and they are basically granted on a rolling basis as funding remains. And so they are decided by the director or the co-directors of the studio. So, basically right now at this precise moment, it'd be myself and Nika who would be choosing the recipients. And as long as funds remain, we try to support these kinds of projects. They often go to students, but it's not just for students. And faculty have received and staff have received microgrants as well. They're made available to assist projects that require modest support or which arise between scheduled cycles for major funding. We try to use them to spur arts research investigations at their earliest and most fragile state, enabling rapid response research. And they're wonderful for zapping excuses. Faculty who are here, if you have a student who's got a great idea and they go, oh, but I would need to buy this gizmo to do that, and it's like $200, have them apply. We can basically zap that excuse and like, here you go, here's your $200. Now you got to do the thing. The smallest ever microgrant that we've given was $10 for a special piece of software. A student had just kind of idly mentioned that if they had this, they would do this cool little project. And I'm like, here you go. Now you got to do it. Then we also offer full grants, and these are larger grants up to $5,000. They are available as before to any person actively affiliated with Carnegie Mellon, whether faculty, staff, or student. They are selected in 2 rounds with deadlines, and they are selected by an advisory jury with 5 members. And just for the record, those people are the director or co-directors of the studio, the head of the School of Art, a CFA faculty person not from the School of Art, a CMU faculty person not from the CFA, and a non-CMU Pittsburgh arts professional. The next deadline is in 2 weeks on February 13th. And you can find more information online, including our application form at the URL you see there. How are awards selected? Well, we have some boxes to check. We look for things that are competitively evaluated on their vision, originality, quality, and potential impact of the proposed project, the professional, artistic, and or technical capabilities of the applicants, the feasibility of the project, the proximity of need. So we sometimes will support things that are more urgently needing funds than things which are for further down the road. The potential impact of our support on the project and for the artists. So if we think, wow, this would really be probably transformative for this person, and the extent to which the proposed work pushes the envelope, fulfilling the specific mission of the FRFAF to support interdisciplinary arts at the frontier. So what's this frontier business? It's kind of a fraught concept. Nika, you want to say a few things here?
So as the inheritor of this term, the frontier, it's something that I've been doing some of my own digging into, both in terms of finding resources for myself to better expand my own understanding of creative research, being a laboratory, and where to situate ourselves in terms of this word that carries a lot of baggage and colonial inheritance. The word frontier, I'd like to contextualize it in the sense of being somewhere where we are going into the unknown. We have questions. Perhaps there's a epistemological cut of information. So, what are the unknowns? What are your questions? Where does research situate in your practice? I also think that it's important to contextualize it in the framework of futures, that future being a place that one can project their own ideas, their own concepts, and that is yet to be known. And so this can take the form of technological frontiers or futures, but does not have to. It also can be under supported research areas, of which there are many. We can also think of the past and unknown pasts, unknown contexts. But really, this is where the research is situated in our intentions with this grant. And so, I think I've covered this slide. I'm not reading it.
Yeah, that's good. I'll just say that at its heart, the Frank-Ratchye Fund for Arts at the Frontier, we inherited the term frontier, but it's about encouraging questions and curiosity.
Yes.
And so that's good. Let's I mean, one thing that's important is that in the application, applicants have to articulate the ways in which their project is at some kind of frontier, or is addressing some kind of future, or is addressing some kind of research question, or is a response to their curiosity. And I think this is very important to do. So we'll talk more about that soon. Now, how competitive is it? Well, I want to say that it's both kind of easy and kind of competitive, and it sort of depends on where you're making your application. The FRFAF is an endowed grant program within a university, within an academic context. For many people who are getting these grants, their FRFAF grant will be the very first award on their CV, on their resume. It's meant to be relatively low stakes, but also to model the challenges of outside grant programs for people who can then go on to make other applications. So because we aim to support, i.e. educate, as many people as possible, the larger grants are much more difficult to secure. So it's comparatively easy to secure a $500 microgrant. It requires good diligence to secure a $1,000 award. It's twice as difficult as that to get a $2,000 award. It's twice as difficult as that to get a $3,000 award. It's twice as difficult as that to get a $4,000 award. And if you are trying to aim for a $5,000 award, it has to be a really spectacular proposal, sort of checks all of our boxes. Because we could otherwise be using it to sort of change the lives of 10 people. So this is our sort of thinking. Like we have given $5,000 awards, as I'll show in a moment, but we say the level of risk sort of goes down, and we want to be supporting slam dunks. Whereas for $500, we will take lots of risks. So what are some typical sizes of full grants? Again, with microgrants, they tend to be 500 and down, but with the full grants for students, we've given 66 full grants since 2013, totaling $140,000. The median was $2,000. The full grant average was $2,100. 92% of the grants were at $3,000 or below. And the largest ever grant was $5,000, but grants of $4,000 and up, of which there were very few, a handful, typically went to teams of people, teams of students. And most students, honestly, were getting microgrants. We've given 272 of them since 2013. So, a student who gets a $2,000 award is doing pretty well. They're right in the pocket of where we think that most students are going to get funded. To faculty, it's a little bit different. you know, sort of shifted to the right a bit. We've given about 50 full grants since 2013, totaling $183,000. The median was 3,400. The full grant average was 3,590. 82% of grants were less than or equal to $5,000. The largest ever faculty grants were of $7,000 and went to actually fairly large collaborative teams of multiple faculty working together. And in addition, faculty have received microgrants, 27 of them. Who has received FRFAF awards? We've given 430 grants since 2013, totaling almost $500,000, and they've gone to faculties, grads, staff, and the largest sort of group of recipients, just by count of people, is undergrads. By department, the studio exists to support the College of Fine Arts. The studio is not part of the School of Art, but it does have a strong historic connection to the School of Art. For the last 13 years that I've been the director, I'm appointed in the School of Art. And this, what you see here is you see the distribution of grants to the various schools in the College of Fine Arts. I will point out that we do also support people from other departments like School of Computer Science and so on. Obviously, about 47% of the grants have gone to folks from the School of Art. More outreach is needed. It's one reason why we're doing this info session here today. We very much welcome applications from the other areas. How can they be spent? We try to make this as flexible as possible. You can have us you basically work with our business manager and Linda Hager. She can, for example, purchase supplies for you. And those supplies and equipment, for that matter as well, can be purchased tax-free because Carnegie Mellon is a tax-exempt institution. If we purchase equipment for you, you can keep it. You can use the money to pay outside services, contractors, consultants, and collaborators. You can use the funds to hire student assistants, or pay experimental subjects. You can give activity payments to other CMU staff and faculty. Note that those payments are taxable. You can bring guests and collaborators to Carnegie Mellon. It's particularly good if you have an outside collaborator, you want to fly them in. We can have them fly in and pay them for their time. You can use it to purchase food, especially things like meals for teams, workshop food, exhibition hors d'oeuvres. And you can purchase expenses for travel when that travel is required to realize the project. What's not permitted, it's one of the few things that's not permitted with the grant, you can't purchase conference travel. So you can't use these funds to go to a conference to present the work there. It's about, you can, however, get a flight to go to some place special to do some kind of on-site field recording. All right. This is a bit in the weeds, but how can awards be directly dispersed? Through the university's accounting system, we can purchase stuff for you. We can reimburse expenses to you upon the submission of valid receipts. And for students only, the option exists to receive a check. So note that that's called a non-qualified scholarship, and this may be taxable income. But direct cash to faculty and staff is not possible, except when you're making an activity pay to somebody else. Okay. So the studio is this special laboratory within the College of Fine Arts. It's an actual small department, and we provide actually a wide range of bespoke sort of custom support to our grantees and other supported artists. And we assist on a case-by-case basis with things like, purchasing and payroll, travel arrangements. We can do that for you with our business manager. You don't have to ask the business manager of your department to do this for you, although you can if you want. But we have a business manager who exists to support our grantees, and she will, purchase gizmos for you. We can help you create business contracts with your outside vendors or your outside collaborators, and this could include rights management. We assist with bureaucratic wayfinding, circumbureaucracy, and basically compliance. We can help with fundraising and grant writing, marketing and public relations. So if you want to use the FRFAF grant as a crowbar or as a lever to kind of solicit even bigger grants, this is something we can help with. We can provide introductions and access to local or remote expertise if we have it. And we also have some space and can provide special equipment if we have it as well. Finally, we have a program coordinator, Bill Rogers, who's a wonderful staff person who's got a lot of different kinds of skills. He's a sort of human Swiss Army knife and can do a lot of kinds of help. So if you have a special event you need help with, we can provide his assistance. And we have a staff videographer, a media archivist whose help we provide on a case-by-case basis if you need to have somebody video record your performance, for example, or edit your documentation. She can help with that. That's Olivia Connolly right now. So what's the process? Well, here are 7 steps sort of for a typical successful process. You make an appointment to speak with us. You would speak with Harrison, Dr. Harrison Apple, who's our new associate director, and sort of workshop your application before submitting it. Students should also secure a letter of recommendation from their advisor. And we want the advisor to tell us confidentially, is the student capable of their proposed project? And, are they in fact advising this project? And do they endorse it? There's an online application, and a few weeks later, we get back to you with our decisions. If awarded, you will sign an agreement. The agreement specifies many things, actually, but 2 of the ones I want to highlight here are that you agree to provide us with documentation of the completed project when it's finished, and you also agree to acknowledge the support of the fund wherever the work is presented. So then at that point, you received your grant, you then confer with our business manager, Linda Hager. She can help you purchase stuff and pay people. At some point, Harrison may check in with you and say, hey, how's it going? Give us an update. Tell us how things are going. We want to keep some tabs just to make sure things don't go off the rails. And then when the project is completed, then you submit your project documentation. We have an online form for that. And this is, we want this to be a really easy thing to fulfill. We basically ask for 100 or 200 words of narrative, what'd you make, and why is it interesting, some images and a video if possible. We'd love to have more if you want to give us more, but at a minimum, we need this. And so, sorry, I'm just kind of moving this out of here. And yeah, these are what we presented on the studio's website and elsewhere. So you give us the rights to present that information. Okay, so on our application form, I want to sort of highlight one kind of maybe unusual kind of thing. We ask for your maximum and minimum requested amount of funding. We ask for a range, and these give our jury some flexibility. They tinker with the numbers so that they can honestly try and help as many people as possible, and to help better serve people where they can. So we ask for the bare minimum you need for your project to succeed. This is basically the notion that if you ask for less than this, your project literally just can't work, right? And so be honest about this. If you can do the project for this low amount and it's possible to do it, let us know that so that we can give that. And then a maximum request is sort of like, if you had as much money as you needed to do the project really, really nicely, what would that be? And if you had that money, what specifically would you do with it, and how would it improve the project? I'll tell you that we try to support as many people as possible. So we often do support people at their minimum amount. But grantees do receive more than their minimum amount some portion of the time, maybe about a quarter of the time. All right. What if my application is rejected? It happens. Please apply again. Sometimes our jury really does like your project, but they simply chose to prioritize other applications that had a shorter fuse, that had more pressing schedules and more urgent deadlines. So it's not necessarily like we don't think your project's good. It can actually just be like, it's less urgent than some other people had proposed with. Make an appointment with us. Often our jury will provide very concrete feedback, and our associate director Harrison will discuss that feedback with you to help you understand why the jury, what kinds of concerns they had. And here are some typical kinds of concerns. Perhaps it just wasn't well explained, and it was hard for the jury to imagine what your project is, what it would be, or how it would take shape. Sometimes the project is not obviously researched. It's not clear how it's new, compelling, curiosity driven. Sometimes there's a logistical issue you haven't considered, and we just have a lot of knowledge of how the university works, and maybe we know that what you've proposed isn't possible, isn't legal, and we have some advice that we want to give you, or some requests to sort of diligence we want you to do before you come back and talk to us some more. Or sometimes you actually priced yourself out of being given a grant. You requested funds in a more competitive bracket than necessary. Remember I said, like, it's twice as difficult to get $4,000 as $3,000. The jury might have been willing to, to risk $2,500 in your project, but at the $5,000 you requested, they were seeking a slam dunk. So that's why you want to think carefully about your maximum and minimum request amounts. as far as policies for repeat funding, again, this is a little detailed, but we want to emphasize, we love it when people return to the well. And since 2013, lots of people have gotten more than one grant. 46 people have received 2 awards, 15 people have received 3 awards. We've even seen 8 people who've received 4, 5, or 6 awards from the FRFAF program. However, you cannot be the lead applicant on 2 current active FRFAF projects. So you must submit documentation on previous projects to get follow-on funding for a second one. But you can actually be a secondary collaborator on somebody else's active FRFAF project. And as I mentioned, documentation for prior projects must be officially submitted through our online form before any new applications will be considered. And the jury may evaluate the documentation of your previous projects in making decisions about your new ones. So they'll look at what you did before and, make it good. Also, they'll look at things like, on your FRFAF award agreement, you agreed to acknowledge FRFAF support. So did you? On your personal webpage, for example, where you talk about the project that you made with our previous support, did you acknowledge the Frank-Ratchye Fund for Arts at the Frontier? There's language on our contract that we ask for, and if it's not there, we might think, this person is not as careful as we would like. So there are some other rules about funding specific projects, not people, but projects. No project may be funded more than twice, and applicants are limited to 1 award per academic year. There's a very tiny, rare exception to this, and I don't really want to dwell on it, but sometimes the jury will sort of look at a project and say, like a full application, full grant application, and say, we're not so confident in this project, whether it's actually possible to do what you say, or maybe the person is, we're not sure if this person can really do what they say. So they might ask for a proof of concept and basically award a microgrant and say, here, look, here's a microgrant. Go show us that you actually are able to do this, what you say, and then come back to us with the documentation of the microgrant. And if it's successful, then we'll give you a full grant. And so this is a kind of cutout that actually allows for potentially for two grants within a single year. But it really is, we have to emphasize very specifically, it's for a proof of concept for the same project. And it has to credibly be a proof of concept and has to credibly be for the same project. Do projects fail? Yeah.
Go on. We have a question also about the last couple slides. Are there geographic restrictions where the project can take place?
As I mentioned, we do and have funded travel for projects. There was one professor whose project required him doing aquatic diving in a river in France. So we sent him to France so that he could put on the wetsuit and dive into the Seine. So I would say there might be some university restrictions on doing certain kinds of work or sending money to places like
You're
Iran.
Scratching your mic a little bit.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. There might be some restrictions on sending money to Iran, for example. That kind of the university has some. It's not about the FRFAF, but the university has some restrictions on like travel to or sending money to Iran and a couple other countries like that.
Also, there's taxes that are sometimes taken out of paying people abroad. That is something you need to consider. Mm-hmm. If you want to pay someone $500, they might only get like $250 by the time it gets to them. So these are just things to, dig in deeper into the CMU financial rules, and Linda and Harrison can definitely guide you in these like specificities of your project. That's right.
Yeah. I mean, if you're paying a person who's a foreign national and they are performing the work for you abroad, then there's, then it also depends which country they're in, because some countries have an agreement with the United States preventing double taxation. That's a pile of paperwork to execute, but once you've done it, then they only get sort of income tax withdrawn from one country, not two. But so yeah, it really depends. So as I mentioned, projects do fail, and it wouldn't be research if there was no chance of failure. This is really important to say. It's, if there were no chance of failure, it wouldn't be research. It would be just, something else. And so, about 1% of projects were canceled, where the person realized they wouldn't be able to do what they said they wanted to do, and they respectfully said, "I'm sorry, I have to cancel it. It's just there's no way I can do this." And then there have been a few projects where it just failed outright. They took the money and just didn't work. And then a bunch of projects of probably 5 to 10% have had to adapt to changing circumstances, and that's okay. It's one of the reasons why we ask, to check in with you. And if you sense that your project is going in an unexpected direction because of circumstances, talk to us. We are very accommodating.
I also want to add to that the funds go to a project. So, we have had a lot of folks dealing with the COVID pivot on their projects that they've received funding. To be clear, the jury decides based on a project that you propose. You can't, without a lot of conversations and with the directors and with Harrison, move that funding to another project because the jury has decided on a specific project. So
that's 100% correct. The funds are for a project, not for a person. So it's sometimes happened when a person had some money left over that was unspent. They were like, "Can I use this for another project?" Or, no, generally not. Or they're like, "Oh, the project that I wanted to do, it fell through, but can I use that grant for a different thing altogether?" And no, it's reapply. We want to. That's too different. We canceled the project and we have the person reapply.
And honestly, it's a kindness to the future applicants of the FRFAF for you to let us know that you are not going to fund the entirety of your funding. And then that goes back into the pot and gets redistributed. So that's where that money goes.
That's right. There are other sources of funding available, and I just kind of want to mention, there are times when, your proposal is not well matched for the FRFAF. It happens. It might be because the jury just said, this is not something they wanted to fund right now, or it might be because it's, it doesn't meet some of the criteria that we articulated earlier. So it's important to point out that there are other sources of funding. Here's a great one. The studio offers the Steiner Visitor Invitation Grants. These are specifically grants for bringing guests to Carnegie Mellon to, for example, give a workshop or an artist talk or a public lecture. And that's the appropriate funding for doing that kind of activity. So if you want to, bring a guest to talk to your students just as a lecturer, FRFAF's not the right tool. The Steiner is. These things can be combined. You could, if you work with us carefully and we talk it through, you could have, potentially a Steiner visitor grant to have somebody talk to your students, and also get a FRFAF grant for them to, work with you here and collaborate. So they come to campus, they give a talk, and they also make a project with you. Great. Let's get both grants going at the same time. More fun for everyone. The studio also offers grants specifically to faculty. These are called Directors Fund sponsorships, and these are typically $2,500 and up. That's a flexible research funding and support for one academic year. This is specifically for faculty, and there's an emphasis here. I don't want to say an exclusive one, but an emphasis on supporting faculty projects that are kind of platform-like in the way that they, for example, might involve lots of students in kind of working towards a larger goal. So don't have to be exclusively, but talk to us about that separately. That's a whole separate grant program. And of course, there are other sources of funding available throughout campus for faculty and students. There's the Surge for undergraduate students. There's Gush for graduate students. And then there are a bunch of other funds as well to support things like the creation of new classes or for interdisciplinary research, depending on who you are and what kind of status you're in. These are great programs to know about. More information with the studio does not run these, and these are run by other units within Carnegie Mellon. To find out more, we can find information online on our website. Also, the application form is there. And if you are going to apply and have an outstanding grant, be sure to get your documentation in first. Our online documentation form is over there. And please come speak with us as well. Harrison is just getting spun up, but we'd love for you to meet them and to talk to them about your project. Thank you. I'm going to stop my share.
Before I stop recording, are there any questions that folks want to ask into the recording? Okay, I'm stopping.